The lights once followed her wherever she went, a woman in sequins, standing before roaring crowds, promising to change the way money worked forever. Her name was Ruja Ignatova, and she called herself the Cryptoqueen. In the mid-2010s, she became a global phenomenon. Educated at Oxford, fluent in several languages, and wrapped in an aura of success, Ignatova launched a cryptocurrency called OneCoin. A coin she claimed would dethrone Bitcoin and open the financial system to everyone. From London to Lagos, from Manila to Miami, millions bought into her dream. Between 2014 and 2016, over 3.5 million people across 175 countries invested more than $4 billion. The promise was simple: get in early, become rich. To her followers, she was a visionary. To critics, she was something else entirely. And then, in October 2017, at the height of her empire, Ruja Ignatova disappeared. No one has seen her since. In her wake lies one of the most audacious financial crimes of the century, and a mystery that still defies resolution. Welcome to Bad Things. Join us as we trace the rise, fall, and vanishing of the woman who built an empire on trust, disappeared into legend, and left behind a question that refuses to die. Do you want to bring bad things with you wherever you go? Our episodes are now available as a podcast. Look us up on your favorite podcast app and listen to the most truth-seeking true crime podcast out there. It began quietly in the aftermath of Bitcoin's first boom. In 2014, Dr. Ruja Ignatova, a Bulgarian-born, German-raised economist with a doctorate from the University of Konstanz, announced a new cryptocurrency that would, in her words, take the best of Bitcoin and make it accessible to everyone. The idea was called OneCoin, a digital token she claimed was faster, safer, and designed not for the elite, but for ordinary people shut out of traditional banking. Ignatova presented herself as the antidote to Wall Street greed. Elegant, articulate, and armed with credentials. "I want to give the power of money back to the people," she told one cheering crowd in 2015. Her stage appearances were grand productions. Lights, music, and thousands waving branded flags as she strode on in glittering gowns. "Who wants to be a millionaire?" she'd shout, smiling as the audience erupted. To millions watching online, she seemed unstoppable. The first woman to lead a global crypto empire. Behind the scenes, though, OneCoin wasn't like Bitcoin. It wasn't decentralized, open source, or verifiable. Its blockchain, the public ledger that gives real cryptocurrencies their credibility, didn't exist at all. Every coin, every transaction, every price update was controlled by OneCoin Limited, the private company Ruja owned. Still, her charm and confidence drowned out skepticism. She told investors that Bitcoin was for the rich, while OneCoin was for everyone. The business spread fast. Recruits sold packages of educational materials that came with tokens to mine OneCoin, the same model used by multi-level marketing networks. Investors were promised exponential returns as more people joined. The company's own exchange set the value, and early buyers saw their dashboard show rising balances that, in reality, could never be withdrawn. By 2015, OneCoin had offices in Sofia, Dubai, and Hong Kong. Lavish events in London, Macau, and Singapore drew tens of thousands. She made it feel like a movement, one former promoter recalled. It wasn't about money, it was about belonging to something historic. In truth, it was history repeating itself, a pyramid scheme dressed in digital disguise. Ruja Ignatova was living the part of the global success story. She bought multi-million-dollar properties, including a £13.5 million penthouse in London, and traveled in private jets. Photographs showed her with designer handbags, fine wine, and a trail of admirers. Her lifestyle reassured investors that OneCoin was legitimate. "Look at her," one follower told the BBC. "You can't fake that level of success." But beneath the glamour, cracks were spreading. In 2016, financial regulators in Germany, India, and Italy began investigating OneCoin's operations. The UK's Financial Conduct Authority issued warnings. Banks closed accounts linked to the company. Still, OneCoin's expansion continued. The returns were too tempting, the marketing too effective. The first serious blow came in 2017. Sebastian Greenwood, OneCoin's Swedish co-founder and Ruja's close associate, was arrested in Thailand and extradited to the United States. Around the same time, prosecutors in New York began building a criminal case, alleging that OneCoin was a fraud from day one. They accused Ignatova and her team of running a global pyramid that had defrauded investors out of billions. Ruja knew something was coming. She had already faced fraud charges once before, in a 2012 German case involving a failed investment fund. Colleagues later said she seemed increasingly paranoid in the months leading up to her disappearance. She was bugging phones, limiting meetings, and telling staff not to trust outsiders. Then, in October 2017, she vanished. According to airline records, on the morning of October 25, 2017, Ignatova boarded Ryanair flight FR6309 from Sofia, Bulgaria, to Athens, Greece. It was an early flight, no entourage, no public announcement. She carried only a small handbag. From that moment, she was gone. In the weeks that followed, OneCoin members grew anxious. She failed to appear at a planned company event in Lisbon. Executives gave vague excuses. Dr. Ruja is on an important business trip. But as days turned to weeks, silence settled in. Her phone stopped working. Her email went dark. By early 2018, authorities worldwide had begun to act. In March, Greenwood was formally indicted in the US on charges of wire fraud, securities fraud, and money laundering. Ignatova was named as co-defendant, but her whereabouts remained unknown. That same year, Konstantin Ignatov, her younger brother, stepped in as OneCoin's public face. He told followers his sister was taking time off and assured them she would return. But OneCoin's credibility was crumbling. Investors demanded payouts. Governments froze accounts. In 2019, as Konstantin landed in Los Angeles for a company event, he was arrested at the airport. Facing a lengthy prison sentence, Konstantin chose to cooperate with US prosecutors. In sworn testimony, he revealed intimate details about OneCoin's operations and about his sister's final days in Bulgaria. He said Ruja had learned her boyfriend was secretly working with the FBI after she bugged his apartment. She panicked, he said, and fled days before the US indictment was filed. She disappeared and told me not to ask questions, he testified. She said if something happened, I should not be curious. The investigation widened. American authorities indicted multiple associates, including Mark Scott, a former corporate attorney who laundered $400 million in OneCoin proceeds through shell companies and Caribbean accounts. He was convicted in 2019. Another figure, Gilbert Armenta, Ignatova's one-time boyfriend, pleaded guilty to laundering funds and received a 5-year sentence. In 2023, Greenwood was sentenced to 20 years in prison. Meanwhile, OneCoin's remaining leaders in Sofia tried to keep the illusion alive, but the empire was collapsing. Offices were raided. Websites were taken down. Victims across continents realized their savings had vanished into nothing. And still, there was no trace of the woman who had started it all. No arrest, no public sighting, no communication from the Cryptoqueen. By 2022, with the fraud scale fully exposed and all other players accounted for, the FBI added Ruja Ignatova to its 10 most wanted list. The first crypto figure ever to appear there, and one of only 11 women in the list's history. Officials described her as armed, possibly traveling with bodyguards, and warned that money can buy a lot of friends. The reward for information leading to her capture rose to $5 million. The Interpol Red Notice that followed turned her disappearance into a global chase. Investigators scoured leads from Dubai, Greece, Russia, and Bulgaria, but every tip led to a dead end. There are victims in nearly every country, FBI Special Agent Ronald Shimko said in frustration. We just want justice. She destroyed lives. For years, nothing surfaced. Then, in 2023, fresh reports from Europe hinted at something darker. Whispers of organized crime, of betrayal, of a possible murder. But none of it could be verified. The official record ends where the myth begins, with a woman stepping off a plane in Athens and vanishing into history. Today, more than 7 years later, investigators still don't know whether she's alive or dead. The only certainty is that her disappearance marked the final act of one of the world's most audacious frauds. What began as a dream of a financial revolution ended in silence, leaving millions of victims and a single haunting question. What really happened to Ruja Ignatova? When a public figure disappears without a trace, speculation fills the void. In the case of Ruja Ignatova, the theories range from cinematic to sinister. Some insist she's alive, living a secret life financed by stolen billions. Others believe she was silenced by the same criminal forces that once protected her. Over time, investigators, journalists, and internet sleuths have built competing narratives, each one attempting to explain how one of the most recognizable women in cryptocurrency could simply vanish. The first and most enduring idea is the fugitive in hiding theory. According to this view, Ruja Ignatova meticulously planned her disappearance, leveraging her intelligence, money, and underworld contacts to vanish on her own terms. Supporters point to her timing, leaving Bulgaria just days before the US unsealed its indictment against her, as evidence that she knew exactly when to flee. She was always 3 steps ahead, one former OneCoin associate told a German reporter. She had backup passports, offshore accounts, everything prepared. With billions at her disposal, the reasoning goes Ignatova could have easily bought her way into anonymity. Fake documents, cosmetic surgery, private protection, all within reach for someone who, as FBI officials noted, left with a tremendous amount of cash. She had networks in Bulgaria, Germany, Russia, Greece, and the United Arab Emirates, countries with inconsistent extradition laws and robust black markets for false identities. Some claim she's living under an assumed name in the Middle East. Others imagine her aboard a yacht, drifting between private ports beyond the reach of law enforcement. Investigators themselves haven't ruled out the possibility. The FBI has publicly stated that Ignatova may have altered her appearance and could be traveling with armed guards. A Bulgarian intelligence source told the BBC, "She is alive, that's what we believe. With enough money, you can make yourself disappear forever." It's an alluring story. The criminal mastermind who escaped the net, outsmarting authorities and living comfortably among the rich and powerful she once defrauded. But the theory has its doubters. For someone as famous as the Cryptoqueen once was, total invisibility would require not only resources, but the cooperation of everyone she ever trusted. As years pass with no credible sighting, no intercepted communication, and no trace of financial activity linked to her name or known aliases, the on-the-run explanation becomes harder to sustain. Even fugitives with smaller profiles eventually leave footprints, a photo, a wire transfer, a rumor with substance. Ignatova has left none. The second major theory, and perhaps the most chilling, is that Ruja Ignatova was murdered. This perspective contends that she never made it far after her flight to Athens. Instead of orchestrating an escape, she may have fallen victim to the same criminal organization that helped her flee. In this version of events, Ignatova's disappearance wasn't a vanishing act at all. It was a cover-up. Evidence pointing in this direction began surfacing in Bulgarian media around 2022. Journalists digging into her past found that her personal security chief, later identified as Christoforos Taki Amanatidis, was not just a bodyguard, but an alleged drug trafficker and one of Bulgaria's most powerful organized crime figures. When we talk about Taki, we talk about the head of the mafia in Bulgaria, said Ivan Hristanov, a former deputy minister who investigated the country's criminal networks. He's the man you don't see, only hear about. And if you cross him, you disappear. US court documents later revealed that Taki's name appeared in connection with the OneCoin probe. Prosecutors stated that a major organized crime figure had been involved in the disappearance of Ruja Ignatova. Leaked Europol files suggested that the same network used OneCoin to launder drug money. To many investigators, that connection changed everything. OneCoin, they now believed, wasn't just a white-collar scam. It had become an arm of an international criminal operation. In 2023, a Bulgarian investigative outlet, BIRD, published what it described as a leaked police report containing a disturbing account. A police informant had overheard a man, allegedly Taki's brother-in-law, boasting that Ignatova was killed on a yacht in the Ionian Sea in late 2018. Her body, the informant claimed, was dismembered and thrown into the water. The motive, reportedly, was to erase evidence tying Taki to OneCoin's stolen billions. The gruesome tale ricocheted through global media. Yet even as it spread, investigators cautioned that it was unverified. Bulgarian police neither confirmed nor denied the authenticity of the leak. Still, elements of the story aligned uncomfortably well with known facts. Ignatova's deep ties to criminal figures, her sudden disappearance while under their protection, and the subsequent transfer of her properties in Bulgaria to associates linked to Taki's network. Her penthouse ended up with people close to him, journalist Dimitar Stoyanov reported. If she was alive, she wouldn't have given up those assets. The murder theory gained further traction after Frank Schneider, a former Luxembourg intelligence agent who has worked as Ignatova's advisor, gave an interview describing her inner circle as full of crooks and gangsters. Months later, Schneider himself disappeared under mysterious circumstances. To observers, it seemed like yet another thread cut from the web of those who knew too much. Skeptics of the murder narrative argue that, like the others, it lacks definitive proof. No body has been found. No forensic evidence has surfaced. And while the underworld connection is plausible, the details, the yacht, the dismemberment, the sea, could easily be the stuff of rumor. There's always a story like this when someone vanishes, said one retired Europol agent. It's possible, but unproven. And in Bulgaria, rumor travels faster than truth. A third, more recent theory took shape in 2023. Ruja Ignatova is alive, but in hiding in South Africa. This version emerged from a German documentary by filmmaker Johann von Meerbach, who claimed to have uncovered new intelligence pointing to Cape Town. His investigation began after a series of murders involving Bulgarian nationals in the city, one of whom was allegedly cooperating with US authorities on OneCoin-related crimes before he was killed. Our sources in South Africa told us Ruja was seen here, Meerbach said in an interview with WDR. She's been living under protection, surrounded by people who owe her. The film cited several factors supporting the South Africa theory. First, there were reported sightings of a woman resembling Ignatova in Cape Town. Second, her brother Konstantin Ignatov had travelled there in 2018, the year after her disappearance, and posted about his stay online. And third, OneCoin executive Duncan Arthur, a South African citizen who once worked directly under Ruja, claimed that she was definitely alive. Arthur said he was present when Konstantin was arrested in 2019 and insisted that he was still in contact with her at that time. He added bluntly, "There is no murder. She is alive, period." Meerbach's documentary also sought to discredit the claim that Ignatova had been killed on a yacht in 2018. His team found that the alleged hitman named in a leaked police report had actually been imprisoned in the Netherlands during the time of the supposed murder. That made the murder story fall apart, Meerbach explained. He argued that, in the absence of any verified evidence of death, the more logical assumption was that Ruja survived and found sanctuary in South Africa, a country where Bulgarian organized crime networks have a notable presence. Still, even this theory rests on fragile ground. None of the alleged sightings have been verified, and no independent agency has confirmed the filmmaker's claims. A spokesperson for Germany's State Criminal Police, LKA, told reporters that while investigators operate under the assumption she is alive, this is procedural. It simply means no proof of death has been found. To critics, that's far from confirmation. And if Ignatova truly were living freely in Cape Town, her existence would require near total secrecy from everyone in her orbit. A difficult feat for a figure whose image once dominated global headlines. 3 theories, 3 incompatible realities. One has her living freely under a new identity. One places her in hiding, alive but trapped by fear. And one ends her story in blood and betrayal. Each interpretation draws from fragments of truth, her intelligence, her connections, her wealth, and her enemies. But none can be proven beyond doubt. And yet, when you line them up side by side, one begins to feel heavier than the rest. Not because it's sensational, but because it fits the pattern of what happens when organized crime meets a collapsing empire. To understand how Ruja Ignatova truly vanished, one must step away from fantasy, from the image of the master fugitive, sipping champagne under a false name, or the vanished mogul hiding peacefully on a beach somewhere, and look instead at the hard pattern of what happens when power, greed, and organized crime collide. Every trace of the Cyberqueen's life in 2017 points toward a single truth. She was surrounded by people capable of immense violence, people who had both the motive and the means to ensure her silence. By the time she boarded that Ryanair flight to Athens, Ruja was living on borrowed time. She knew the FBI was closing in, that her boyfriend was cooperating with investigators, and that her company's accounts were being scrutinized. She also knew who her real partners were. Not just co-founders and lawyers, but criminal financiers who had funneled drug money through OneCoin's fake blockchain. Her security team wasn't made up of standard bodyguards. As former Deputy Minister Ivan Hristanov told reporters, she was protected by people who can make anyone disappear. Once you're in that circle, there's no easy way out. The picture that emerges from testimony and leaked documents is stark. Aristoforos Taki Amanatidis, the shadowy figure at the heart of Bulgaria's organized crime scene, wasn't just guarding her, he was using her. The Europol intelligence files obtained by journalists indicated that Taki's network leveraged OneCoin's global financial channels to launder proceeds from narcotics and arms trafficking. When OneCoin collapsed, it wasn't just investors who lost money. Powerful criminals risked exposure. For Taki and those around him, Ignatova's arrest would have meant catastrophe. She was, quite literally, the only person alive who could directly connect their names to billions in illicit transfers. In that light, her disappearance ceases to be a mystery and becomes something closer to an inevitability. Multiple independent investigations by the BBC, the German outlet BIRD, and several former law enforcement sources all point toward the same sequence. After arriving in Athens in October 2017, Ignatova was collected by a small convoy of men known to have ties to Taki's network. Her brother Konstantin later testified that her bodyguards told him she was met by Russian guys. Those men may well have been intermediaries working for the same crime syndicate. From that moment, there are no confirmed sightings, no digital footprints, no verifiable communications. The woman who once could not go a day without media attention simply vanished from every system on Earth. That level of disappearance doesn't come from careful planning alone. It comes from control. The kind only a criminal organization can enforce. When journalists later examined her assets, they found that her penthouse in Sofia, a mansion on Bulgaria's Black Sea coast, and several shell companies were quietly transferred to individuals linked to Taki's enterprises. The change in ownership occurred within months of her vanishing. You don't transfer everything to someone else unless you no longer have a say, Bulgarian reporter Dimitar Stoyanov explained. And in this case, those who benefited are the same people who would have had reason to remove her. What's more, the people in her immediate orbit began to fall one by one. Frank Schneider, her former advisor, disappeared while awaiting extradition to the US. Gilbert Armenta pleaded guilty. Mark Scott was convicted. Sebastian Greenwood received 20 years. And Konstantin, once fiercely loyal, told prosecutors everything he knew. The only person missing from the cascade of arrests and convictions is Ruja herself. The one person whose testimony could have exposed a web of offshore accounts and criminal connections that stretched far beyond OneCoin. It's telling that no one from her family, not her mother, not her husband, not even Konstantin, has ever made a public plea for her return. They have never claimed she was alive or sought to clear her name. It's as if they already know there's nothing to find. Investigators have long noted that her relatives continued to access money after her disappearance, suggesting that arrangements were made. One German official privately described it as a settlement, compensation for silence. By 2023, the Bulgarian press began openly naming Taki as a suspect in her disappearance. Though he has never been charged, the pattern surrounding him is chillingly familiar. Witnesses intimidated, reporters threatened, properties changing hands through front companies. One police source described him as untouchable but not invisible. When asked about Ignatova, a senior Bulgarian investigator told the BBC, "The people who protected her are the same people who took her out." If she truly intended to live as a fugitive, why flee without her daughter, her closest staff, or even her trusted assistant? Those who study long-term fugitives emphasize that complete silence, not one transaction, not one sighting, is nearly impossible. For someone as high-profile as Ignatova, it borders on implausible. The brutal logic behind her likely fate is as old as organized crime itself. Ignatova was brilliant, but she was not invincible. She was playing in a world where loyalty is transactional and knowledge is lethal. When her empire began to crumble, she held information that could destroy men far more dangerous than herself. And once her value as a shield expired, she became a liability. As one former FBI investigator put it, when you're mixed up with that level of organized crime, there's no retiring quietly. You either pay or you vanish. That vanishing, in her case, was permanent. Everything points to a planned removal, not by law enforcement, not by some masterful escape, but by the very hands that had once ensured her safety. Whether her end came in Athens, on a yacht, or somewhere along the route between, the mechanics matter less than the motive. She knew too much, and someone made sure she would never have the chance to talk. In the years since, pieces of her former empire have been carved up among those same networks. Her properties are occupied. Her money is laundered through new fronts. The underworld she once leveraged has absorbed what she built. In Bulgaria's shadow economy, her disappearance is whispered about not as a mystery, but as an example. A warning about the limits of ambition. For the millions she defrauded, that truth offers grim closure. She did not escape justice, not really. Whatever the law could not do, her own circle did for it. The woman who once commanded global stages, who told the world she would create the future of money, was almost certainly swallowed by the very machine she helped feed. As one European investigator said quietly, if she was alive, we'd have heard her voice by now. People like Ruja don't stay silent unless someone makes them. Her story ends most likely not with a new name and a hidden fortune, but in violence. A secret death buried in the deep, shared only among men whose names never appear in headlines. And that is what most likely happened to the Cryptoqueen. Not a vanishing act, not a triumphant escape, but an execution. A final transaction in a world where loyalty is measured in money, and silence is the ultimate currency.